direction. The draft assets and the draft allocation, that'll kind of take care of itself, and we have the job to do on that front. But hopefully we're positioning ourselves organizationally to put ourselves in a position where you can hopefully have some success, sustainable success for a long period of time. So we're not there yet. I don't want to misconstrue what I'm saying or anybody think otherwise. But I would say where we're positioned here today, where the team is positioned currently, building on kind of the foundation that we put in place a little bit last year, some of the players that we've re-signed here in free agency, which we can certainly talk about that. Happy to address some of that here as we go. And then not looking too far ahead, but I think as it sits here today, we have almost $100 million of salary cap space at our disposal. So that could change over. There's a lot of things that could change between now and then. But I would say just where we are today, that's kind of where we're positioned. So I think it's important for us to move forward, and that's the most important thing. So, certainly start with a question. Brooks, go ahead. Why don't you ask the first question? I know everybody's probably got something they want to ask. So,
what did the trade deal that you got, the return that you got to Deshaun Watson, how much did that match what your value of him was? I guess a little bit of the process of negotiating the trade, no trade clause.
Yeah, I would say, we've talked about this a little bit. Our job, whether it's coach, player, is to ID, fix, assess, and then find solutions to whatever the perceived impediments may be. So certainly that was a part of the equation that we had to factor in. I think the impetus for kind of getting teams to the table, when you have a situation like that, was there's X number of teams that I think there would have been interest in potentially waiving that clause for. So in order to get those teams to the table, we had kind of a certain threshold of what it would take to get to that point for those initial discussions to take place. And then from there, you just kind of have to work through the trade compensation and whatever the compensation is that you feel makes the most sense. So I think you have to be thoughtful, and I think you just have to take the information, process it, and try to make the best decision at the time. So that's why we went ahead and did what we did.
Nick, with the trade clause in the process, because of his leverage of having that, how much did it have to become kind of a collaborative situation where you kind of let him have meetings and just how that went to be able to find his team and his run?
Yeah, there were certain parameters that were put in place. So we kind of worked with David. He worked with Deshaun. So there was certainly communication early in the process, and we articulated that to the respective teams early in the week, and then the process went from there.
At what point did you know Deshaun was never going to play for you guys again?
Yeah, I don't think there was any particular point in time. So again, like I've said from the beginning, kind of one day at a time. So what the future holds, sort of to a certain extent out of my control, out of anybody's control the things that we can control. So, I don't want to speak for him about what his intentions were or whether or not those were going to change. So my responsibilities to our organization is to continue to be that as long as I'm in my position. So I think that's the most important thing for all of us to recognize and just to move forward.
But did that change? Did anything change for your perspective between when he first asked for a trade and when the lawsuits were filed?
No, I think we took it one day at a time. I think you guys we've talked multiple times. Take everything one day at a time, take the information, process it, and try not to project about what may or may not happen. So that's kind of how we try to approach it. And I think, like we've talked about this previously, kind of create two separate buckets, right? Kind of keep that bucket over here while also trying to maintain our focus on running the football team. And so the players and coaches during the season, that was their focus. Ultimately, this was kind of my responsibility with the blessing of ownership to kind of handle this situation, and that's what I've tried to do.
Has this changed your perspective or the team's perspective on no trade clauses, and what do you make of the idea of recognizing a no trade clause to force a trade rather than to make it block?
Yeah, well, I would say whatever took place prior to my arrival, I certainly can't control. What I'm going to try to do is do what I feel is best for organization and whatever that entails. So whether it's contract front, contract structure, a lot of that too comes down to negotiation with the other side. And there's always going to be, even during free agency, if we want to look at that in kind of real time, there's going to be a little bit of a give and take, certainly. A player thinks he's worth X, we think he's worth Y. Okay, what are the things that are most relevant? What are the things that are most pressing? What are the things that are really most important to you, said player, in order to consummate an agreement? So that's part of my responsibility, part of that dialogue with whoever that party is on the other side. So again, my responsibility is to try to do the best thing for the organization and do what I think is right, and then make that, provide that information to ownership. And ultimately, from a football operations standpoint, if it pertains to adding players to the team, that's going to be something that ultimately I'm going to have to continue to make sure that I make the right decisions. Go ahead, one more. Go ahead, one follow-up. Yep.
Player relationships, is there like a lesson to be learned organizationally about how you guys cultivate those relationships, especially with your star players. There's an argument that maybe why they have to come to this success with it. Like, did you guys learn a lot there and like how you build your relationships with your star players?
Yeah. The goal of any good organization is to try to have success collaboratively. So, and you have to rely on everybody. You can't make it about one person. If you make it about one person, it takes it out of the context of the team. And I would say with football specifically, there's 53 players, and then when you add the practice squad players, you're talking about 70 players that are impacting on a day-to-day basis. And then the relationships between those players, the relationships with the, call it 20 or so coaches, and then the relationships with the people outside of the football operation. So all those relationships are going to be important. So I think the best practice is to maintain open dialogue, have open communication, support each other, and if there's a difference of opinion on something, try to come up with some degree of a resolution. And again, like we talked about a little bit earlier, this is a solutions-based business. So it's about finding solutions. It's about trying to provide answers to questions that you think make the most sense for everybody. So, I think every day is an opportunity for us to learn something and just try to make good decisions and try to install best practices. But in the end, the goal organizationally is to try to win. And you can't do that unless you're doing it collectively as a group. So that's what our players want. That's what our coaches want. That's what our fans want, quite frankly. And, Lovey's talked about that, the importance of our fans. They just want to see a good product on the field with good players, and they want to see a team operate, very functionally. So that's hopefully what we're going to be able to do here moving forward. There's no crystal ball. There's no magic dust that you can wave on it. So we just kind of take it one day at a time and just try to work. I mean, I've said this before. It's really about the work. It's about the work that we put in. It's about the work that we do in the offseason. It's about the work that we do on the field. And ultimately, it's going to lead to hopefully a good result on the field.
You're listening to the Nick Caserio, Deshaun Watson trade press conference from earlier this morning.
Yep. Go ahead. Yep. Yep, we'll kind of work on it. Everybody will get a chance. Yeah, Kim will get a chance. Yeah, don't worry. Go ahead.
Now that you all have moved on from Deshaun Watson and trading, does that mean that now Davis Mills has a decent franchise, or is a quarterback still in play for you all going into the draft next month?
Yeah, I certainly wouldn't jump to any conclusions, I would say, specific to Davis. Davis had opportunities last year. Did a nice job with those opportunities, but we're kind of starting from scratch here a little bit. I would say when you get into the draft, you really don't want to necessarily eliminate any one particular position or any one particular player. You just want to look at it in totality and just figure out what makes the most sense, for the organization. So it's about picking good players. It's about picking the right players that you think fit what you're trying to do. So we'll look at everything. We're knee deep in that right now. We have another kind of 5 or 6 weeks left until we get to the draft, but working through that process. But, Davis has certainly earned an opportunity here, and I'd say that's kind of the extent of what he's earned. But I think he's excited about the chances that he has in front of him, and kind of we'll see how it all unfolds. So go ahead, Kim, and then Vanessa.
Yeah, Nick, we know that there were kind of the quote-unquote final four teams that presented packages that you thought were adequate and that others thought was adequate. But how many teams initially were interested or did you get calls from before those final four?
Yeah, I would say there was a fair amount of teams. I think the teams, what we try to do is bring the teams that had, I would say, a legitimate interest, and that was kind of based on, I would say, maybe the compensation that was presented, kind of going back to the earlier question Brooks asked. I think there was a certain threshold that I kind of had established in order to make it a legitimate discussion, and if we got to that point, then we can engage a little bit further. So, I would say I don't want to get into the exact number, but, it was probably a few more than, however many teams that everybody was reporting on here at the end. So.
How much do you think that this situation with Deshaun and losing a franchise quarterback has set this franchise back? And how much do you think the draft picks you got in exchange for them will help get you guys back on the franchise?
Yeah, we can't really worry about what's happened in the past. We're kind of here present day in time. So, look, we've won 4 games over each of the last 2 seasons. So there's certainly opportunity and room for improvement. So our job is to try to continue to bring good players into our program, give them the opportunity to have success on the field. And really, it's going to come down to how well we can execute on Sundays and how many games that we win. So it's not going to be one particular player, one particular pick, where we pick that player. Good players come throughout the draft. Good players come in the draft through all rounds. Good players come for other teams. Good players come in for agency. There's been plenty of players in this league that weren't drafted that are some of the better players in their position. So you really don't want to kind of pigeonhole yourself and say, well, if we don't do this with this pick, it's going to be, it's going to put the organization in a difficult situation. So that's all we can deal with is the truth, and this is where we are right now. So I think the most important thing is, like I talked about from the beginning, excited about the opportunity to move forward. There's a lot of work ahead of us, but, I think we're in a better position, maybe than we were previously, just because there's clarity for everybody involved.
And to build on that, is there any sense of relief or kind of, I don't know, just the exhale of not having this hanging over your head since you've had it for 18 months?
Maybe for you guys. No, I think, again, I think the most important thing is clarity. Everybody just has clarity. Everybody just has an understanding of where we stand. So I think that's the most important thing for all of us to understand and recognize. So we managed the situation probably as best we could. Again, I try to probably take the burden and responsibility on my shoulders, because really ultimately it was going to kind of be something that I was going to have to deal with and handle. So, try to take it off the players, try to take it off the coaches, try to take that take that focus there off of them and let them focus on the things that they do well, which is playing and coaching football.
Thank you. Two things. Veteran quarterbacks. Are you looking at any? I know that you're veteran quarterbacks. Are you thinking about bringing anybody in? If you look at anybody?
Yeah, we'll look at all of our options, what those entail. So, again, there's no, I would say, set timeline or set deadline. I think right now we're at about, call it 68, 69 players on the roster. So at some point, we're probably going to have further additions here to the team, whether it's over the next few weeks. Obviously, we're going to have new players on the team here at the end of April. And then between now and the start of the season, there's a lot of things that could potentially happen. So we're certainly cognizant of everything that's going on in the league. We've done a lot of work. We'll look at every option, and ultimately, we'll do what we feel is best for our situation.
This week that Colin Kaepernick was in town, going, is he somebody you would look at, and did any of your personnel staff take a look at him while he was in town this week?
Yeah, that's not something that I was aware of, or where he was. So again, we'll do whatever we think is best for our organization, and we'll look at whatever the options are, wherever they come from. Let's give somebody else a question here that hadn't yet.
First round picks, historical return, just based on the history of the NFL. But there were reports out there that you were looking for maybe some players too. Just the thought of not getting maybe some established players back in the return.
There's always reports out there, right? So, yeah, I would say there was really never other than 3 first-round picks, I would say probably the rest of it was a little bit of speculation. So you just try to look at, okay, what do you think makes the most sense? And not to go stock market here, but the market's the market. So whatever the market says, you can't create the market. So sort of the market is whatever the market is. So you have to take that information and, okay, whatever the market says it is, that's what the market says it is. You can't make up a market. You could have a market in your own mind. Well, it should be X. Well, if it's Y, then it goes back to kind of what we were talking about, with Jerome a little bit earlier. Just find a resolution. Okay, what's the solution? Say so. So I'd say we'll see how it goes. But again, there wasn't I would say, set number that we were was important.
All right, so let's pause right there. Go ahead and hit pause, Andrew. Sean Pendergast, Landry Locker with you. It's episode 2 of the Deshaun Watson trade special programming here on Sports Radio 610, because Nick Caserio spoke this morning, met with the media for a little over 30 minutes. We'll have the second half of the press conference for you at the bottom of the hour. But Sean Pendergast, Landry Locker with you. Landry, I think a couple of things from the first half of that press conference. The two themes from what we just listened to, I think, 1, clarity, and 2, the no trade clause and the impact on the trade. I think in listening to Nick Caserio answer multiple questions about there being a certain threshold that teams needed to meet just to be involved in these trade talks, and then the fact that last answer right there, we'll get to the clarity part of this in a second, but I want to focus on the no trade clause here. I think the answer right there, where he was kind of looking over at you at the press conference, you and I were both out there, and he was answering about markets and the stock market. For those who don't know, he glanced over at Landry, because Landry loves those stock market analogies.
This was a good one, though. This was the best one that he's ever given that made the most sense, though.
Yeah,
in my dumbass opinion.
Well, he didn't compare it to any companies or anything like that. He said the market is the market. You can't create the market out of thin air. Is essentially, I'm paraphrasing, but that's what he said. That to me is Nick Caserio kind of tacitly acknowledging this no trade clause really hamstrung us here. He would have loved to have gotten 3 first-round picks and 3 second-round picks and 2 players. And if Deshaun Watson didn't have a no-trade clause and probably 22 civil lawsuits against him right now, secondarily to the no-trade clause, then Nick Caserio would have been the one creating the market and the supply and demand here. Instead, it was Deshaun allowing suitors into the mix. And then ultimately, as we saw from what really was the thing that swung the pendulum to the Cleveland Browns, it was money to Deshaun Watson that ultimately sealed the deal. But that to me, we'll get to the clarity part of this in a second, but that no trade clause, I don't think Nick made excuses about it, but there were certainly things, little threads in the press conference today where it was very clear that was putting a ceiling over the market they were going to get for Deshaun.
Yes, and that's the reality. Like you and I and Seth and J Lo and Clinton show, we can talk about, what you should get and what you get in an ideal world. This was not a perfect situation for Nick Caserio. He had to deal with what he had to deal with. And as you sleep on things and you kind of step away from the emotion of it, you look at what Caserio got. And I thought J Lo really put it good yesterday when he was on with us. Caserio didn't get fleeced. Caserio got as much as he could get. And that's how I look at this situation. Because with what Deshaun Watson gave the Texans for 5 years and with the value of a quarterback, I don't know that you could have laid out any compensation and it looked great once it actually happened. You can't predict how you're going to react when it happens, but Nick Caserio was in a unique situation in that he's not the one who pissed off Deshaun Watson, and he's not the one who negotiated the no-trade clause. So that's what he means when he says the market is what it is, and that's his point of view. And I thought it was actually a really, really good analogy about the stock market, that you just got to work with with the card that you're dealt. And Nick Caserio wasn't dealt a perfect card by any stretch of the imagination.
The analogy that I made today on Twitter, just in sitting back and thinking about how this whole thing went down mechanically with trading Deshaun, this was not a normal trade at all. At all. It was really a quasi form of free agency. It's almost like restricted free agency where the Texans don't get a chance to match the offer. And the analogy that I eventually arrived on, because Deshaun never played a snap of football on the extension that he signed. He was still playing on his rookie contract. Right? I mean, 2022 was the first year of the 4-year extension that he signed. That contract extension that he signed basically became a souped-up franchise tag, where the team that wanted Deshaun had to give up 3 first-round picks to get him. Normally you have to give up 2 when you sign somebody with the franchise tag, as Brandon Scott jumps in with us here in studio here on Sports Radio 610, episode 2 of the Deshaun Watson trade saga. But, Brandon, we were just talking about Nick not openly saying the no-trade clause hamstrung us, but I think acknowledging parts of this deal that there was a ceiling on what they were going to get for Deshaun Watson.
That was the part that I was most interested to see how he would react to, because we all know that is what was different about this trade was, a number of things, right? The no-trade clause, the relationship. You've seen, I'm sure you guys have seen on the internet, the comparison to the Russell Wilson. It's hard to avoid since Russell Wilson just got traded the week before.
Right.
The comparisons to the return. And there are a couple of things that are different about it. I mean, obviously they obviously both had the no trade clause, but like aside from the off-field allegations part of it, you had this dynamic of everyone knowing and understanding that Deshaun Watson was never going to play here again. You had the soured relationship, all of the trust issues that you guys talk about on your shows, and all of that going on. Like, to me, that sets up an entirely different market. In addition to the no trade clause, the relationship dynamic, what we've seen in 2021 with him being paid to not play, inactive every game, but on the roster. Clearly, his only utility on the roster was as a trade piece. Like, when you factor all of these things in, it creates an entirely different market. Not to get into it, I'm not a stock market nerd by any stretch of the imagination, but it creates an entirely different market for Deshaun Watson when you consider the dynamics that Nick Caserio was dealing with.
Like, the Texans, they don't have the card that they had even the first month that Nick Caserio was here, where you can say Deshaun's our quarterback. We're moving forward with Deshaun Watson. He's our quarterback. Like, Cleveland's saying that right now. Seattle was saying that up to the point where they traded Russell Wilson. They didn't have that card. They never had that card, and were never able to say that. From the perspective, though, of the fan, and this is the other perspectives, because we've talked about Caserio's. From the fan perspective, I can kind of feel, and I was on with Carrington Harrison this morning, and he used the word slimy. Like, this thing just has a whole slimy feel to it from a fan perspective, and I can understand it. And I'll salute David Mulligetta for being slimy, because he did what he needed to do to get Deshaun Watson the most amount of money as possible. And David Mulligetta went into yesterday as one of the best agents in the game. I don't know. You could just put this whole thing on a resume, and if I'm a player, I want that guy representing me. But even without the off-field stuff, this was a slimy situation in that you had a guy who signed a contract, became the second highest paid quarterback of all time. And Stanford Routt is the guy who has been the most put off by this. He doesn't play a snap on that contract. He doesn't play the whole year before, gets his full salary, and then all of a sudden he wants a new contract when the other contract that he signed hasn't even kicked in. That is if you're a fan and you're put off by Deshaun Watson and you feel like this was slimy, you're correct. But I can't blame Deshaun for doing that either. And that's why it's important to understand every point of view. But it's actually kind of hilarious that this is even allowed to happen, quite honestly.
Well, how shrewd is the notion that with all of the, let's call them shoddy or sketchy decisions, like without convicting Deshaun of anything, but all of the decisions that we've seen him make or have known him to make over the last year, for him to fail up and to ultimately be rewarded for all of this behavior, no matter how you actually view the cases and everything, like from forcing the trade, from whatever the decision making that allowed there to be a situation where he could be accused of 20 some odd sexual assault cases, like from all of that to be rewarded for it. Like the notion of that is like in the immediacy, it feels like the only winner right now is Deshaun Watson. Like ultimately Cleveland could win, the Texans could win depending on what they do with the picks, but in the immediacy, it just feels like Deshaun Watson's the one who failed up.
I think Mulligetta is the biggest winner in this whole thing.
Them together,
yeah,
sure. That's what I mean.
But I can even separate the two, because Deshaun Watson, him getting the highest guarantee in the history of the league, does nothing to help this image that he's supposedly trying to go repair. If anything, it distracts or detracts from doing that. This has made him more hated around the NFL. Mulligetta is just a guy who's executing and doing his job very, very well and trying to get the most money possible for his client. That's what his mission is as an agent. It is to get the most money possible for his client. One of the people needs to be embarrassed in this whole thing is Roger Goodell.
Oh, absolutely.
Roger Goodell's got to be embarrassed this morning when he wakes up and a face of the league player who has been in court and battling for his legal life for the last year for some pretty disgusting accusations and some things, quite honestly, that you just alluded to, Brandon, decisions he's made that he's admitted to making. The way he's gone about scheduling the massages, some of the things that have gone on that he's admitted to. And all of a sudden, by $80 million, he's got the highest guarantee in the history of the league.
And not only that, you lowered the salary in the year in which you're going to face a suspension.
Yes,
like that's even worse. Like it's not
slimier than the guaranteed money.
You lowered so he lowered his salary for the 2022 season to where if he does get suspended 6 games, I think the amount, Sean, you did the math, it's like 5% of what it had it been the original contract.
If it had been and what Landry's referring to is he's supposed to make $46 million this year under this new contract. They converted like 44.5 of the 46 to a signing bonus. And when they suspend you, they only suspend you based on your base salary. So his base salary goes from $46 million down to $1 million and change. So now he's losing about $55,000 a game instead of like $3 million.
And all of that speaking to your point, Sean, about Roger Goodell being the one who should feel the most embarrassed about this, because Roger Goodell is the one who actually had the opportunity to make the decision whether to put him on the commissioner's exempt list and feel however you want to feel about that. But now, in retrospect, this is a big F you. This is the middle finger to Roger Goodell in the league in so many ways.
Go ahead and suspend me now.
Right.
Yeah.
And Roger, but the same league that protected him and allowed him to, and even the commissioner's exempt list would have allowed him to collect his salary. But there's no argument for time served like you might see on the internet or anything like none of that exists because this guy was able to be on the team, active and collect the salary without no repercussions. And now the ones that are coming, he gets to stick his middle finger up.
The greatest thing would be if he suspended Deshaun for way more than people think Deshaun's getting, and they're like, Commissioner, why did you do that? Because he pulled this stunt with the signing bonus. I was going to suspend him for 4 games, but he pulled this stunt, so he's getting 12.
well, Landry, you were giving – I was listening last night. You were giving him credit for operating within the rules and basically hustling the game. Yeah. Like, I do wonder, without knowing the exact letter of the law, like the league has to approve trades, right? Like, I do wonder at what point do they raise their hand and say, wait a damn minute here, I know you finesse the system, but we got to implement our own veto system.
I don't even know that the Texans want them to do that.
Fair enough.
And that's a lead into the other thing I wanted to get to before we play the second half of the press conference. The other big theme today, at least in the first half of what we just played. We just played the first 15 minutes. If you're just tuning of Nick Caserio's press conference, if you're just tuning in, Sean Pendergast, Landry Locker, Brandon Scott. This is not a recorded show. This is live on Saturday afternoon, and we wanted to come in and react to Nick Caserio's press conference. The other big theme was clarity. He brought up that word multiple times. Now everybody, from Deshaun to the Texans to Nick himself, now have clarity as to what things look like moving forward. Guys, that tells me that they were not ready to dig in on anything. Like I think there's a lot of people. I think the question was even asked of Nick by Brooks Cabina. Was there a point where you thought about pumping the brakes and using the leverage that you had to make Deshaun sit for another whole year? It was very, very evident today. That was never in the cards. This is a franchise that wanted to move on from Deshaun Watson.
Yeah, and my thought, I was going to ask a similar question of how much did timing come into this? Like when you also talk about not being satisfied with the compensation, well, you also have to factor that into the matter. Like, did Nick Caserio at some point kind of look himself in the mirror or see the writing on the wall, whatever cliche you want to use, and say, hey, the situation is not going to change in terms of Deshaun Watson being able to pick his own spot and, essentially being able to dictate how this thing goes. Like, what's to say that the next time this trade proposal comes up that I'm not going to be forced to have the same hang-ups and hiccups that I got right now.
Yeah, and I also wonder how much relationships came into play, the relationship with Mulligetta, the relationship with players, et cetera, to where you wanted to get your 3 firsts and figure it out, but you also didn't want to burn any more bridges than the bridges that were burned. Again, he said this, I can't control anything that happened before I got here, but that is reality. You also don't want to add fuel to the fire of what you inherited.
Right, and that may be him saying that might be a message to David Mulligetta, a reminder to David Mulligetta, like, look, man, a lot of the stuff that Deshaun got sideways with was here before I got here.
Right.
Like if you just so happen to be the agent for, say, I don't know, Bryce Young next year, and we're picking first.
There's a good chance. There's a good chance
that David Mulligetta is the agent for everybody after what he pulled over the last 48 hours.
Well, and y'all played the first part of the press conference. I asked him about that, like what was the lesson to be learned about how you build and cultivate these relationships with your star players, with your key players. Not only, these are guys that are either going to be, in Deshaun Watson's case, your franchise cornerstone, the best player on your team, or your most valuable trade asset, one way or the other. And in this situation, he's got the no trade clause, makes it supposedly a collaborative effort. Like there is a value here in like cultivating these relationships with the players and their agents going forward and making sure that however which way it goes, that you can sort of end things amicably.
Yep. All right. Let's take one here. A few minutes. We'll take a break. We'll come back with the second half of the Nick Caserio press conference, in which Landry Locker gets a question in, right? You get a couple questions in here on the back end of it.
Yes, I do.
So do you care to tease your questions for the audience?
Basically, how do you prevent what happened with Deshaun Watson from happening again? How do we prevent that, sir?
Yep. So we'll hear that. We'll hear Nick Caserio's answer to that. Sean Pendergast, Landry Locker, Brandon Scott. We were all three at the press conference this morning. Second half of the Nick Caserio Deshaun Watson trade press conference is next.
The Texans have a first-round pick for the first time in 3 years. But the question is, what will they do with it? The NFL Draft is less than 7 weeks away. And as news develops on the strategy of the Texans at number 3 overall, we'll bring you the latest. Insider access. Exclusive content. Sports Radio 610. The Texans play here.
Mattress back here asking, how well did you sleep last night? If you need to sleep better every night, you and your partner, here's a great way to sleep great every night, very possibly free. Come out to Gallery Furniture right now. Buy a Tempur-Pedic, Sealy Posturepedic, Stearns & Foster sleep set. Buy the mattress, buy the box foundation, buy the adjustable bed frame, buy that mattress, $3,000 plus. Have it delivered free today. Start sleeping great tonight. And if a team from Texas wins the big basketball tournament in New Orleans, which culminates on Monday night, April 4th, 2022 in the Caesars Superdome, if a team from Texas wins that tournament, your $3,000 plus Tempur-Pedic mattress, Sealy Posturepedic, Stearns & Foster mattress is free. If a team from Texas doesn't make the 4 final teams, then the team located closest to Gallery Furniture North Freeway geographically will be your team. And if they win, your mattress is free. Sleep great tonight on a new Tempur-Pedic mattress.
That's the sound of a crack in the ceiling found at a home inspection. But with a Realtor by your side, a newfound leak might only cause minor worries. With their expertise, a Realtor can suggest a credit at closing and even connect you to a contractor to help you shore up that leak and alleviate your worries. When it comes to cracks in your plans, the expertise of a Realtor can make all the difference. The difference between an agent and a Realtor is real. Realtors are members of the National Association of Realtors. That's who we are.
Do you want the best for your car? Then fill up with Premium at Circle K. Circle K Premium is our best fuel with double the cleaning detergent, protecting your engine from corrosion and damage so it can work at its best. And that, my friend, increases your mileage for more cha-ching in your pocket. Plus, when you fill up with Premium at Circle K, you can save up to 20 cents per gallon. Offer valid Thursdays or Fridays at participating stores. For details, visit CircleK.com. Circle K. How convenient.
When sickness or injury happens, and it happens to all of us at some point, being able to know that you've got a partner that's going to help you through those difficult times, that stability is really important to provide confidence so you can live your life. Hello, my name is Jim Springfield, president of Blue Cross and Blue Shield of Texas. I've worked for about 30 some odd years on the provider side of the healthcare spectrum, and Blue Cross is probably the most recognized healthcare brand in the state. The commitment that it brings to our members, some 8 million strong, both in Texas and those that are living in other states affiliated with our companies here, that's what matters to me, the integrity of the brand to do actually what it says it will do. When I think about Blue Cross and Blue Shield, I think about stability, I think about access, I think about assurance. You know that Blue Cross is going to stand for their member. We come to work every day trying to do that.
Blue Cross and Blue Shield of Texas, a division of Healthcare Service Corporation, a mutual legal reserve company.
Imagine wearing a weight vest and the amount of pounds you need to lose, 20, 30, 50 plus pounds, and then you take that thing off and you feel 20, 30, 50 pounds lighter. How would that change your life? Go to sodaweightloss.com and find out. Soda is what? State of the art.
Some horses can't be tamed. Some traditions can't be broken. Welcome back to the Houston Livestock Show and Rodeo. Tickets at rodeohouston.com.
At Exclusive Furniture, we want you to start enjoying your furniture right away. In fact, we can deliver your purchase to your home the same day. Not 6 months, not 6 weeks, same day as in tonight. We just don't think you should wait that long for your furniture. That's why we have in-stock furniture ready to be delivered. I know that my family would want it today, so we'll make sure your family can get it tonight. Exclusive Furniture, where low prices live.
The Watson trade is done. Let's discuss. Here's Sean Pendergast and Landry Locker on your home of the Texans. Sports Radio 610.
All right, Sean Pendergast, Landry Locker, Brandon Scott in studio as well. It is episode 2 of the Deshaun Watson trade specials here on Sports Radio 610.
What time tomorrow?
Saturday afternoon, I know, right? Well, for me, 1 o'clock on CBS Sports Radio.
Yeah.
I promise you it's going to be a lot of Deshaun Watson on the show tomorrow on CBS Sports Radio. I believe we're running hoops tomorrow, so you can listen on the Odyssey app on CBS Sports Radio. All right, Sean, Brandon, Landry with you. Let's get to the second half of the Nick Caserio press conference today, which appropriately enough is led into with a question from our good friend Landry Locker, who asked Nick Caserio, how confident are you that what happened with Deshaun is not going to happen again?
How confident are you that moving forward, you won't find yourself in a position where once you acquire a player of that caliber, he's not going to want to be a Houston Texan?
Yeah, I think nothing's guaranteed, so I don't want to sit here and say that anything's guaranteed. But I mean, the hope is that when we bring players in the organization that want to be a part of what we're doing, and I think we've seen some of that in free agency, my interactions and discussions with agents, there's players that want to come to Houston. There's players that want to be in our program. There's players that want to play for Lovey. There's players that want to play with the players that we have in our program. So our job is to try to go out and find players that fit the profile of what we're looking for, of the team that we're trying to create, of the team that we want to be, and be able to identify those players and then bring them into the building. And then once they are in the building, then our job is to develop them, is to coach them, is to give them an opportunity to have success. So each case is different. Each player is different. You never want to kind of put everybody in the same box, but the players that want to come to Houston, that want to be in Houston for a reason, hopefully, and our job is to go out there and find the players that want to be here and hopefully want to be part of a successful program.
That's what I'm saying, like when you kind of want you to go under the bus, do you ever like just kind of gather yourself and you go home and have a field phone calls, you're having to look at salary cap stuff, you're, functioning without draft picks last year, and you just say, man, I would have done this a lot different before had I been here earlier?
It's all about finding solutions. So you take the information, and you can't change what's happened, right, Landry? So here's the information, here's the situation. Nobody's going to make excuses. Sorry, my friends, nobody's going to bitch and moan about your situation and your circumstances. It's okay. Let's deal in the real, let's deal in the now. Let's identify problems, let's provide solutions, and understand that we're going to have to find ways to fix it and make it work. And if that doesn't work, then let's turn the page. I think you have to be very flexible. You got to be able to pivot to something different. Maybe the way you thought originally it was going to go, it doesn't go that way. Okay, well, then you got to be able to adjust and adapt. So I think that's the beauty of the challenge, and I think every team deals with that. Every circumstance is different. Every situation is going to be different. Every team is going to have to deal with something, and that's okay. So I think that's where I would say there's some intrigue in that, and really you want to try to put something together. You obviously have an idea in your mind of how you want that to look, and it might take a little bit longer than you thought, but you can't erase or fix what has happened in the past. It's out of my hands. It's out of my control. We're not going to make excuses about what's happened. There's a lot of good things that I would say have taken place in this organization. And everybody's kind of focused on some of the things that have happened, but there's been a lot of good things. There's a lot of good players here for a long time. So our job is to try to find solutions. Okay, take the next step and then move the organization forward. And that's my commitment to everybody in our building. That's my commitment to the fans, and that's my commitment to the organization. That's my commitment to ownership. And I'll be damned if I don't go down swinging.
We have time for a few more before break. We're going to go to Cody, and then we'll do L3.
We have enough time. I mean, I'm fine. I mean, yeah, we can take as many as we need to.
You guys got back from Cleveland. Would there be more of a sense of urgency from you and your scouting department to make sure you guys hit on those picks, especially considering you trying to match the value of what Deshaun Watson brought into?
Yeah, it depends how you define that. Really, it's about just bringing good players into your program, because we've talked about this previously. Regardless of how good the player you think he is in college, they're all essentially starting from scratch. So once they walk in the building, they're back to ground zero. So how quickly do they assimilate your program? How quickly can they get up to speed with what you're going to ask them to do on a football field? How well do they play? So you're not going to force feed a player in a position where maybe he's not quite ready for. So, we take a lot of pride in the work that we put in. I'd say our college scouting staff, those guys have, they've worked very hard all year. We've had a lot of good discussion, a lot of good dialogue. So our job is to know as many players top to bottom, and as we go to set the board here and position ourselves accordingly, just try to pick good players that we think are going to fit the program that we're trying to build. Good players that give us an opportunity to have success here moving forward.
Cool. Nick, when you kind of look right now, getting rid of Deshaun, was moving on, did that kind of give you just a little bit more comfort to do what you wanted to do from the get-go, that this isn't kind of hanging over your head?
Yeah, again, it's about moving forward. So we kind of know where we are here today. We know what the opportunity looks like in front of us. We're going to try to work hard, and we're going to try to, honestly, it doesn't necessarily change. We're still going to take it one day at a time. Nothing's going to happen overnight. We're not all of a sudden going to draft 8 players all at once that are going to come in here and, do things on the field that nobody expected. So take it one day at a time, try to have good processes in place, try to do a good job here in free agency. If there's an opportunity to add players to our team that we think can help us, try to do a good job in the draft, try to do a good job in post-draft free agency, try to get our players ready for the off-season program, have a good OTA, take some time off in the summer, come back in training camp ready to go with a sense of urgency, with a heightened awareness of we got to go out there, we got to perform, we got to play well, and whoever our first opponent is, which I don't know, that'll be the next discussion when the schedule comes out, whoever we play. But whoever we play, we're going to be ready to go, and it's going to come down to do we go out there and play well enough and give ourselves the best chance to win on Sunday? Because in the end, that's what it's going to come down to. So that's the only thing anybody's going to care about.
The guys that you were able to get back on the roster, really college, get back, you did that, and back to Desmond King. Also getting those guys, and also the addition of Landry, maybe other players.
Yeah, good question. Let's start with our guys first. I think the guys that we brought back, and it was more than the guys that you mentioned, but, guys like JB, guys like Kirko, guys like Desmond, guys like Malik Collins, those guys are experienced players, did a lot of good things for our program, have a presence about and provide good leadership. I would say Jalen Reeves-Maben is a player we actually identified last year in free agency, had an opportunity, or tried to sign him, and at the time it didn't work itself out. So he's a player that has some of the traits and characteristics that fit our program. So I think when you specifically guys like Malik, guys like JB, the Kirko, as we're going to onboard new players onto our team, a lot of young players. So having players like that can provide that leadership, that can provide that direction. Rex Burkhead, throw him into that category. So the players walk in the building and say, what do we ask of a Houston Texan? What are some of the traits and characteristics and behaviors that we want to embody? when you look at those players, those are the things that we want those rookies to see. So you want those rookies to have some of the same qualities, but obviously this is all going to be new for them. So I would say that was certainly part of the team building process as we added those players back to our team and as we added new players to our team as well.
You mentioned the threshold question too, that to do with each other. After you had the threshold, was there a moment after that, or in the process where you were prepared to hold on for another year or wait? And then, since you were able to get the trade done, how aggressive do you think you'll be with the space that's there now that his salary's on the cap?
No, that's a good question. So it really, you have to look at it this way. So however many rookies we draft or how many players we draft, let's call it 8 to 10 players. So those players are probably going to cost, on the cap, kind of $10 to $12 million ish, right? So if we're at 28, those guys are going to cost maybe 10 to 12. Turns by the time they sign their contract, the first year cap hit. And then in season, your operating budget, you need to allocate about $6 or $8 million for practice squad, injured reserve, those types of things. So there's a decent chunk right there. Call it, do the math here real quick, 16 to 18 million that you want to make sure that you have available. So it doesn't preclude you from going out and adding another player. It might be at the expense of maybe a player that's here currently. So, we're going to be certainly conscious and I'd say fairly fiscally responsible as we go through. So we're not going to be haphazard. So we want to be able to kind of work through the season. But if there's an opportunity that we think makes sense for us to add a player to add to our team, then we're not going to bypass that. We'll kind of come up with another solution. So once we get through the season, then kind of looking ahead to next year, there's going to be a vast amount of cap space that's available. So I'm sure everybody's expecting us from free agency to go out there and sign the highest paid players, but we'll deal with that next year. But anyways, there's definitely a logical progression in a process that, just want to be responsible. And ultimately, that's something that, I certainly have to be conscious of. That's kind of my responsibility to the organization and to ownership.
And then, but with the threshold there, were there moments that you were prepared to hold on for another year that wasn't met, or?
No, we were prepared to make the decision that was right for the organization, so that's why we went ahead and did what we did.
Nick, all you guys have said you're going to do what's best for the organization, knowing you're a bit of an analytical guy. When will you know if this was a success? Like, how will you gauge that? When will you know?
That's not for me to judge. So I think it's take it 1 year at a time. Just take it one day at a time. And I'd say the big thing really for us is we just need to make progress. I mean, the most important thing is try to make progress. How quickly is that progress going to take place? That's certainly irresponsible for me to make that projection. But I think we just need to make progress. We've got to move in the right direction. Ultimately, if you don't do well enough, in the end, there's going to be somebody else sitting in this chair. So, I mean, it's going to come down to how well we play in the field. How quickly is that going to take place? There's always a lot of variables and factors that can go into that. So definitely excited about what we have in front of us, excited about the opportunity to work with Lovey and the staff, and excited about the team, once we put that together here. So try to take it one day at a time. Try not to have any unreasonable expectations. But, ultimately the goal is to win and try to have success on the field. So the quicker we get there, probably the better for everybody involved. So I think that's what everybody wants to hear. But, I'm not very good when it comes to gambling. I think I've been to Vegas one time, and I won't even go to the slot machine. So you're asking the wrong person when it comes to things like that. What do we got? Maybe one or two more?
Nick, you got a plethora of draft picks. Let us walk into your mind right now and try to figure out what part of the show you're going to show a shot.
Yeah, I don't think there's any one particular formula. I would say how we've handled it is once we kind of set the board. So this is really more of kind of a draft discussion. So we'll go through it vertically, kind of position the players accordingly, and it's value of the player relative to what we think the role is going to be. And realistically, the grade that we assign to that player, you're probably saying by the second year, here's what we think is going to be. So let's say you think, okay, 62 is a third tackle or swing tackle with the potential to be a starter, okay? So if you've evaluated that player, when you draft him, wherever you draft him, the expectation is going to be able to perform at that level, whenever that is, hopefully by the second year. So stack the board vertically, put the players accordingly, and then we'll work horizontally and then go across positions and say, okay, what player makes the most sense when we have an opportunity to pick? And then when it comes to kind of moving up and down the board, then it's based on supply and demand of the position that's actually available. So if you move back from a player, let's say you really like a player that you're set to pick at wherever we're going to pick, let's just say 3. okay? If you feel that's the right thing to do and that makes the most sense, you go ahead and pick. If you're going to move back, okay, how far you move back, and that's at the cost of how many other players are we going to use. So it's not necessarily about specific players. It's just about finding the right fit for what we're trying to do. So I know I didn't really answer your question, but hopefully that kind of gives you just philosophically.
You move from the third pick to move down to pick up some more picks then for this season.
We'll look at everything. Again, it goes back to what are you moving away from and what do you get in return. So even though we did a trade yesterday, the thought process isn't necessarily any different than when you get into the draft. So what's the cost associated with that trade? What are you actually going to get in return? Okay, does it make sense for where you are at the present time? If it does, go ahead and do it. If it doesn't, then you go ahead and pick. You always have to be prepared to pick a player, regardless of where you're positioned. So we'll be ready to pick a player whenever that is.
Okay, we'll close with Brian, Ari, and Landry.
Brian, Ari, Landry. Okay, got it.
Nick, I just wanted to ask you, have you gotten a chance to talk to Deshaun Watson since the trade has happened?
We've had some communication. I shot him a text and, just wish him well. He'll probably do good things for the city of Cleveland. So it's kind of ironic he's going to a place where I grew up. But he'll do a lot of he's a great player. He'll do a lot of great things for the city. Certainly wish him well in his future endeavors.
And with so many NFC teams that wanted him and, wanted to acquire him, what made you all decide to just go with Cleveland? Still in the AFC, somebody that you could face potentially down the road in the playoffs.
Yeah, ultimately, just whatever you feel is the right decision for your organization at the present time, that's what you have to go ahead and do. So that's why we did what we did.
And Nick, so from a fan standpoint, you mentioned that fans want to see a good product on the field. You talk a lot about process in terms of what you guys have now and what fans kind of would want to see. What's sort of their incentive to see this year's team on the field when there's not sort of like a main guy that you can put on the cover of the ticket package?
I'm not worried about the ticket package. I am, but I'm not. No, it's not about, and I think this is what's important. Everybody wants to make it about one person, one player, one particular thing, and that's important. But the most important thing is having a good team. So it's about having good players, having a good team, and then the team is what the fans are going to respond to. Do you have a good team? Can you go out there and support the team? So I would say, just philosophically, my belief is about having a good team, not trying to make it about one individual. Do you need good players? Absolutely. There's no question. You need good players, and you want players that have a connection, with the fan, and the fans can root for, and that's why they come. They come to cheer. They come to support. They want to see us do well. So try not to make it about one player. So it's going to take time. Nothing's going to happen overnight. This isn't about one player. It's about one draft. It's not going to be about one particular thing. It's going to be a accumulation of things over time, and if we do enough of the right things, then hopefully we put ourselves in a position where we have a product on the field that the city of Houston can be proud of.
You like cross-sport, comparisons. We see stuff like this in the NBA all the time. Like the Deshaun thing. Really haven't seen it with a player of his caliber and playing that position doing this. Do you think this is going to be like a trend? Like, could the NFL be trending towards an NBA situation where a star player is upset and all of a sudden he leverages not just getting out, but where he goes and choosing his destination?
Yeah, Landry, I don't think it's an apples-to-apples comparison. I think every situation is going to be a little bit different. So, what happens in one sport in one particular area, does that have relevance to another sport? I think that's a hard question to answer. So that's probably more something for you guys to talk about on the radio than for me to worry about. So I'm just going to try to run the football team to the best of my ability on a day-to-day basis.
All right, so that is it. That was Nick Caserio's press conference, and went about 30 minutes today, most of it having to do with Deshaun Watson. Landry, I liked your question. I like both of the chances you had to get questions in there. The one that we just heard, that last one, was yours, talking about the comparison of how is the NFL trending towards what the NBA has seen for a long, long time, which is stars being able to force their way onto teams. I do wonder, on the heels of this, guys, and it's Sean Pendergast, Landry Locker, Brandon Scott in studio for another few minutes with you here, breaking things down from Nick Caserio's press conference today. I think there's a lot of owners in the league yesterday, particularly ones that have quarterbacks on rookie contracts that are coming up in the next couple of years. The Bidwells in Arizona, the Browns in Cincinnati, the Spanoses in Los Angeles with the Chargers, who are ready to drive to Cleveland and punch Jimmy Haslam right square between the eyes for the change in the market, the shift in the market that the Cleveland Browns caused yesterday. I do think, Landry, in the spirit of your question, there's got to be a lot of talk amongst ownership and GMs in the NFL within the last 24 hours about what's gone down with Deshaun Watson and how do we prevent this from becoming the norm.
I think there should be. I think the way, look, you play within the rules. So salute David Mulligetta, but there should be. I mean, to get a new contract after you already signed one and haven't even played under it is ridiculous. To have a no-trade clause and then demand a trade, it seems a little bit ass backwards to me. So there definitely should be a conversation because I don't think any fan – and look, I get it. Use the leverage the way you can. But I don't think the trend in the NBA, whether it's Anthony Davis, James Harden, whatever, I don't think that's good for the league. And the NFL right now has the best sports league in the country. Like it's not even close. So that's not a trend that needs to happen. They need to figure something out.
Yeah, but at the same time, though, this was clearly more so about what was good for the players. And I do think that there's something to be said for how a player empowers themselves. And I don't think this is a good look for anybody, but it just goes to show you, like, I think back, guys, all the way to before Deshaun signed his contract. And that summer, he was doing interviews online with Michael Vick and with Carmelo Anthony, and he was trying not to go too far, but he was leaving some nuggets about not necessarily being fully all in on the idea of the Texans, like comparing his situation to Patrick Mahomes. He would do that and say, hey, the situation over here is a little bit different. It's not quite the same established structure. He goes on further later on in the year after the season is over and it's failed to talk about how there's not a foundation and all these other things.
Shift.
Exactly, all of that. And so the writing was always on the wall, I feel like, and it seems like he used this. He could never make this happen without the contract. He obviously had to sign the contract, and he used the contract as a way to get out. Like there was no other way for him to do this other than to get the contract and to also have the no trade clause just in case it didn't work out.
You make it sound like he had that in mind when he signed the contract.
That's exactly what I'm getting at. It feels like, at the very least, not that he just knew for sure that he would want his way out, but kind of like as a just in case. That's the whole purpose of the no trade. It's cleared now.
Almost like he saw 4-12 coming in 2020 in a way.
Or at the very because remember, this is also after the DeAndre Hopkins trade.
Yep.
Trust is being lost. Yeah. Faith is being shaken a little bit. And so it seems like he knew, hey, you know what? I might want to keep the door open for me to, to kind of have an exit strategy even before this contract is up.
Yeah, I don't know that he saw it that way, but I think he was thinking about the next contract. I think he was thinking about getting on the market at the age of 30 and going for the next contract. I think that's where it was. I don't think he was thinking, I'm going to tear this contract up and I'm going to get a completely new one.
But it showed a lack of faith in here, I thought. Like between
and well-deserved, by the way.
Right. No, I'm not. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. And which goes to
he wasn't wrong.
Going to the point that I was making about player empowerment. Like if you're a player and you feel like you're in a situation that's not advantageous to you and you had no choice in the matter, you were drafted by this team and this is the team that can pay you. Like they control your rights. Either you sign this extension or if you're a player of Deshaun's caliber and you can't agree to an extension, you're going to get franchise tagged anyway. Like he could not force his way out of Houston any other way than this. So if and when, it's not to say that he knew or for sure knew that they were going to suck in 2020 or that he, whatever relationship dynamic there was with Jack or with management was going to deteriorate the way it did. But it did show, like, to me, a lack of confidence in the organization that was justified. And this was his way to empower himself to get out of here if need be. And, I was very interested to see how Nick Caserio viewed the idea of, again, weaponizing a no-trade clause, not to veto a trade, but to orchestrate one.
Yeah, he kind of steered clear of that. He was asked, I know you asked the question.
Yep. And Landry's question was in the same spirit of that.
No doubt. And you know what? Guess what? On Tuesday at 7:30, when he's on with me and Seth, he's going to get hit with no trade clause questions again.
It's fascinating.
We're going to chip away. It really is. I'm more curious about, from a broader perspective, is this something, forget about what it meant to the Texans in this instance, should this be something that the league overall is looking at?
Right.
It's bad for the league the way Deshaun used this no trade clause.
Yeah, it's terrible.
Yep.
I mean, it's slimy. I mean, that's the word that was presented to me today, and it's slimy.
Yep.
It's slimy, but it's appropriate, and it's very well respected. Very well played, David Mulligetta.
Yeah, it was within the rules as the rules exist right now. All right, we are done. I think we're done for the weekend. I don't know that anything else is going to happen.
We'll see.
Do we want to do a Correa special, tonight or tomorrow?
Too soon.
Let the wounds heal first.
All right, let's get out. We're done. Brandon Scott, Landry Locker, Sean Pendergast. This has been the Deshaun Watson Trade Special. We will see you. I'll see you Monday, 6 a.m. Landry will see you 10 a.m. Go to sportsradio610.com for all of B. Scott. Have a great weekend, everybody.
The Texans have a first-round pick for the first time in 3 years. But the question is, what will they do with it? The NFL Draft is less than 7 weeks away. And as news develops on the strategy of the Texans at number 3 overall, we'll bring you the latest. Insider access, exclusive content, Sports Radio 610. The Texans play here.
Navien tankless water heaters, the proven leader in condensing technology. Request a Navien because you deserve the best in endless hot water delivery. Learn about Navien's condensing tankless water heaters and find a Navien contractor at tanklessmadesimple.com.
Count on Navien. Okay, so we got the chorizo dumplings, the cucumber empanadas.
Sarah's food truck is popping off.
Come on, guys, let's pick it up, all right?
But if she doesn't find a new chef, her truck will be stuck.
Carl quit this morning, so Jessica, I'm gonna need you on the fryer.
Indeed can help her hire great people fast.
I need Indeed.
Indeed you do. Instant Match instantly connects you with quality candidates whose resumes on Indeed match your sponsored job description. Visit Indeed.com/credit and get $75 towards your first sponsored job. Terms and conditions apply.
Dell's semi-annual sale is the perfect opportunity for a significant business upgrade. Save up to 45% on Dell computers with Windows 11 Pro and get an easy start to your workday. Plus, enjoy special pricing on Dell docks, monitors, servers, and more, all with easy financing options through Dell Financial Services. Speak to a Dell Technologies advisor today to find the right tech for your business with fast, free shipping. Call 877-ASK-DELL. That's 877-ASK-DELL.
Starting Stronger starts at AutoZone, where they've got battery solutions in the form of free battery testing, free battery charging, and replacement batteries that fit your needs. That's what makes them America's #1 battery destination. Get in the zone. AutoZone.
Hi, Tom Bodette for Motel 6, and we'll leave the light on for fur babies. If you think it's been hard being stuck at home for a year, think about your dog. It's been 7 years for them, and they deserve to get out and sniff the world too. So grab Daisy, Ranger, or Doodles and hit the road. But be sure to stick your head out the window and look for a Motel 6. And like all pets, Baxter stays free. Hot dog. I'm Tom Bodette for Motel 6, and we'll leave the light on for you.
Imagine a world with endless possibilities. I'm talking endless saving and endless hot showers. Yeah, you heard me right.